Evening all. How are we all doing? I was just asking Claire about the competition because I got confused. I thought it was tonight, but it's not tonight, it's the 10th. So, no competition tonight. And yes, and it is in fact Pretend Tuesday today. Because what happens is, like, stream is always like the day after tomorrow, so whatever day it is, it's always the day after tomorrow is the next stream. But of course on a Sunday stream, the day after tomorrow is a Tuesday, so I got myself all confused, which doesn't take much, to be fair. Okay, so what is it that we were doing? I'll go over what I have been doing. So I have been going through all of the plugin event handler stuff. So you've got all these event payloads, essentially, and these are the global events that we send out across the game. There were about double this amount before, and I've been sort of slowly culling them and removing them and replacing them with the gameplay message subsystem instead, so that we can get rid of this plugin. Two reasons. One, I try and avoid plugins if I can, because I know I prefer to have full control over the source code and everything. And two, is that this plugin was never updated for 5.7, so right now it's preventing us from upgrading to UE 5.7 because we've got so many of these what are essentially core messaging systems not able to be upgraded to 5.7. So what I'm going to do is strip out all of this, replace it with the built-in function, and then we can get rid of that plugin and upgrade to 5.7 and everything will be fine. One of the reasons I'm so keen to upgrade to 5.7 is because I think it fixes the stereo rendering problem for VR. Right now, VR will crash if you enable stereo rendering, and that's like an engine bug. It's not something I can fix. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that will fix that. And greatly improve VR performance. And that aside, it means I get to play with nanite foliage and that sort of stuff, which is always good fun. Yeah, so I think I've gone through and done the easy ones, but if we look at the reference viewer for some of this stuff, to be fair, that one's not too bad, but you get a lot of other tools and systems in the game that are dependent on these global events, so you can never be quite sure what actually references it. So I need to go through each and every one of these blueprints and make sure I replace any references to this global event with the built-in alternative. And I also need to set up payload structs for all of those as well. So it's yeah, this is not a quick and straightforward thing. It does involve a lot of sort of going through and changing stuff and replacing things and just sanity checking everything, which is a small amount of pain. And one of the things actually was the prop saving. So this plant, for example, doesn't seem to be finding its reference in the prop save data. So that was a global event and is no longer. I've now replaced that with the event handler version somewhere. Yeah, this. So yeah, so whenever the save game is loaded, we have a gameplay message that goes out and says, right, the save game's been loaded. Anything that relies on save data, you can now go ahead and do your thing. So with the props themselves, we simply grab the prop location's save data. We know it's been loaded. Now we can grab it. And if there's any instances where our unique ID for this prop matches what's in the saved data, then we can go ahead and set the transform of that prop so it appears where you left it last. So that's our object permanence, basically. But it's not finding any matches. So even though the data's there, it's not finding matches. So it's just an example of how switching to the different system causes problems. So I need to go through and sanity check that. But I won't do that on stream because that's going to be really boring. So instead, if we just get shots of all this stuff that I was messing about with, then we will get our Sensors NPC and add some additional skills. So we started that back on Sunday, so we'll continue with that. Oh, no, wrong one. That's the one I wanted. There is music. I can see the VU bars dancing. It's just very quiet. Oh, thank you, Leosh. Yeah, I've mentioned it before when I started doing this, that streaming and I guess talking whilst working, and that's probably the most difficult part of it, being able to think about code and think about what you're doing, but also speak while you're doing it, is definitely a learned behavior, and it's not something that ever came natural to me. I'm not a natural presenter by any means. So for the most part, I'm just kind of verbalizing my thoughts while I work. But yeah, I definitely find it easier now than I did back then. And to be honest, I never even look at how many people are on stream. I mean, there could be 10 people, there could be 10,000. It doesn't make any difference to me. So I never really know how many people I'm talking to. Just to answer Anasi's question, what do we have to do for the update? Just polish and bug fixing, pretty much. I need to go through and do a really intense round of testing on VR just to see what works and what doesn't. It would be nice to get a little wrist control pop-up in for VR, but that's probably the only new thing that needs adding. The rest of it's just bug fixing. We got a few multiplayer bugs which need to be sorted out before we can go live. I think that's it, really. It's just bug fixing and polish. There's nothing new that needs making specifically for the next demo update. Cole, yeah, so when we set about designing the ship and the crew, and we were working out, what departments do we need and what do they need to do within those departments, we went with real world vessels as our starting point. So we looked at what kind of departments do they have on an aircraft carrier, for example, and what is the job of those departments. And then we kind of thought about that in the situation of operating a starship, because we wanted them to be as closely analogous to a boat as possible, whilst befitting working on a starship. So there should be a lot of crossover there. But yes, so generally in each department we know what it is players will be doing in terms of the tasks and things that will get raised, because nothing in the game is arbitrary. Every ship system is there for a point. Like all the UI screens and stuff on this ship are here to serve a purpose. Like nothing in the game is there just for the sake of being there. It all serves some kind of purpose. So if we have a department on the ship, then that department is there for a reason, which means it will have jobs that need doing. Some of the challenges, though, is that some departments are easier than others. So like medbay is easy because you just have injured crew members coming in and out with some regularity. There's always going to be something to do there. Engineering is always going to have maintenance to perform. Working as a chef, that's just going to be like cooking, like a cooking mini game, basically. So that's always going to have something to do. The more difficult one is things like captain and helm, because like the captain really is spending most of their time doing nothing, because once you've given the directives to the ship, it takes an amount of time for those directives to be actioned. So whilst the crew are busily doing their job, the captain's just twiddling his thumbs, waiting for them to do that. And similarly for, I guess, most of the bridge stations, if the thing that's happening at the time isn't relevant to your bridge station, then there's really nothing to do. So if you're traipsing around a star system scanning planets, then the tactical guys are just sat in their chair not doing anything, because there's nothing to shoot at that particular moment. And there are going to be lots of instances like that where we just need to make sure that there are other things to do on the ship to entertain players whilst their particular role isn't needed in that moment. Tactical being probably one of the obvious examples. There's not always going to be something to shoot at. So we'll have a firing range down on E-deck, so you can go down and just shoot guns at targets. We'll have like patrols aboard the ship that you can do. We'll have people sabotaging stuff occasionally that can be investigated. There are things that we can give players to do, but their main job, especially if you're assigned to the bridge, won't always be relevant for that given moment. But yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges we face in terms of constantly creating the fun aboard the game, or aboard the ship in the game. Yeah, the ship's going to have various airlocks. So the probe bay, which I can't go down to because I'm on a test map, where the probes go in and out, those are actually airlocks. So there's 2 airlocks at the back, and you will be able to exit via those airlocks if you put a pressure suit on and do EVAs around the ship. A lot of the things like sensor arrays and things, which you can't see because it's dark, but there's our GPS dish up here is one of them, but there will be other sensor arrays around the ship which are physically on the outer hull. So if they get damaged, then they'll have to be fixed from the outside. So you will definitely be walking around in a suit with a spanner fixing things. And when you have surface activity or other stations or other ships activity, there will always be a need to exit the ship in some way. We'll see, Anassi. There's the thing with the streams is that a lot of the work I do during the day is just not the sort of stuff you'd want to put on stream, like going through all of these event handlers and replacing all the struct references and rebuilding the functionality to do exactly the same thing that it's already doing, just using a different process. That is dull in terms of stream content, and a lot of the stuff I do is dull anyway, but that's extra dull, that's especially dull. So sometimes I'd rather just do something randomly on stream than to just not stream. Obviously it's better that I do something, so we just need to make sure that the thing that I am doing is in some way watchable and not just me filling out a spreadsheet. I was going to show you this actually. This is the surface test stuff that I was fiddling with. So what I'm doing at the moment, I'm rewarding myself at the end of each day by letting myself work on this for an hour or so. So once I'm done and I'm thinking to myself, right, that's it, I'm done for the day. For my entertainment, my winding down, I'll go ahead and then start working on planetary shaders. So I haven't done much to it since I showed it off a couple of streams back, but you'll notice that, or at least I hope you'll notice, that the the structure is more refined now. It's definitely a more mountain rangey looking than it was before. And this is what the raw noise output looks like. And it's funny because if you look at a real world mountain range, they actually do look like this. Hang on, let me quickly grab a map. Let's look at the Alps a minute. Yeah, so if you look at a real world mountain range, you see the kind of patterns that you get from the mountain structures are very much the same as like Perlin noise. It's kind of fascinating the way that those structures form. So the general kind of shapes and things you get with this are not dissimilar to how real world mountain ranges go. And yeah, mapped to a sphere, obviously it looks a bit better. So what I have left to do with this now is put in some Voronoi noise to create continental shelves, basically the actual continental plates, and then use the boundary regions to like push up mountains or create dips in the terrain. So it's more of a proper planet in terms of how it's arranged. And then these noise algorithms for erosion can then be layered on top of that to create the actual mountains. But yeah, I'm really excited about getting this stuff done. And you know, if I didn't have other stuff to do, this is what I'd be working on all day, every day. But yeah, it's coming along. And I'm also making a volumetric cloud shader as well. So we'll be able to have full volumetric clouds around the planet visible from space. But as you can see, I've got some issues with that right now. It's going a bit weird. But yeah, so that should be good too. And this is basically the start of fully volumetric gas giants. I know it doesn't look like it to look at, but this is actually volumetric noise being generated in a sphere with an upper and lower cloud deck. So we will be able to basically make it 100% covered in clouds and have this as a gas giant. But for now I want little white fluffy clouds around planets, so I'm starting with that first. But yeah, I've got a lot of work to do before that actually looks like something reasonable. But anyway, that's all the background stuff. So on Sunday, we basically added the groundwork for 2 additional skills for the Sensors NPC, which was searching for specifics. So we can let the NPC just go off and start scanning star systems, looking for specific things. And that would be in isolation, just the sensors guy doing his job. The helm wouldn't be involved, the rest of the bridge wouldn't be involved. That's just them sat there doing a thing. So we need to start fleshing out the logic chain for both of these. And to be honest, I'll probably copy paste. Actually, I might do that one first, then copy paste the logic because it's going to be very similar. But we want them to start picking the closest planets to the ship, closest star systems rather, do long range scans, and then work out whether or not the target criteria has been met. Yeah, I was going to add the moon today on today's stream, but I had a look at what would be involved to get the moon spawned around Earth, and it's actually a lot more complicated than it might appear at face value. So I'm going to have to think on that off stream. But yeah, it would be nice to get the moon in so that we can sort of celebrate Artemis 2 a little bit. Right, so are we on the long range mode? If we're not, switch the long range mode. Okay, so do we have an unexplored target. So once we've validated that we're on the long range mode, we need to make sure that the star system we currently have targeted has some work to do on it, because we don't want to go targeting and scanning things that we've already scanned. So we'll need to get sensor get exploration data. I've made a whole bunch of these macros recently, so we can just grab certain stuff like wherever we are, which is handy. So we'll get our exploration data, and then I suppose we also need to get sensors data, and then we want get rid of all the stuff we don't need. Yes, selected sector location, that should be our star system. Okay, so what we want to know from this is, if we do a for each on there, actually we'll do for each with break. So if we grab our coordinates for the star system that we have already in our scan data, we want to say, is that a match for the thing that we currently have targeted? And if it is, then we want to then go through and I suppose we can do that with a break as well, just to give ourselves some early outs. Every little bit of optimization helps. So if we have a matching system within our data that's been saved, then we need to go through all the different planets and see whether any of them are scanned to less, well, at all in this instance, because we're doing long range. So is our knowledge level lower than 1? So if we haven't scanned it to 1, that means it's not been scanned, in which case we want to make sure we actually acknowledge the fact that we've got a match, and then just break out of the loop, because there's no point continuing to loop through. You also need to break this loop as well. So I think what we'll do is we'll sequence that. So the first thing we'll do is break the loop. So we'll stop that one from looping, but then carry on and loop through there. And actually, before we do that, just make sure that that is set to false before we do the loop, so we don't have any false positives. Okay. So we're going to get an output pin there, an output pin there. so I suppose we'll do it off of this one. I always get myself a little bit confuddled when we're doing looping in an array, like whilst we're looping in an array. So it's like that completed pin isn't necessarily the end of it, because this is the final completed pin when all the work's done. So that often confuses me. So what were we saying? Do we have an unexplored target? Yes, we do. So, okay, so that should be all of it done. So unexplored target exists, and we just want our execution pins. And then I have to remember to actually hook it up, like what I didn't do last time, several times. Yes, and see, so when we do the finding the Earth-like, it will prioritize the star systems that are most likely going to have them. So it won't bother scanning all the M classes, for example, because they're very unlikely to have an established civilization. Technically any star system could have a tech signature, because it doesn't necessarily have to indicate that someone lives there, just that there could be a research station or just a ship that happens to be parked in orbit somewhere. So I think, yeah, so when it comes to tech signatures, I guess we'll just start scanning every star system, just working outward from the ship to see whether we find anything. When it comes to things like Earth-like candidates, then we'll focus more specifically on the kind of star systems that would more likely result in an Earth-like world. M-class systems not being that useful in that regard. Okay, so hopefully breaking this loop won't affect this one from finishing. Okay. Right, so do we have an unexplored target? No. Then we need to target something. And now hopefully I've already done the logic for that somewhere. So if we borrow this, so we're going to pick a system from the list basically. So we've got our sorted sector locations. So these are all the star systems that are nearby within 50 light years, sorted by distance from the ship's current location. So this updates once every light year as you're moving about. So we want to go through this basically in order, and check to see whether or not these particular targets are are contained within the exploration data and are also needing to be scanned. And I'm thinking, given how often we're doing this, it might be worth making this a macro. Because what we've done here, we could potentially macro this to make it easier for future reference. Because we're, yeah, so if we just go by vector. Oh, Lane, thank you. Very, very much appreciated. And yeah, we will continue to continue. Yeah, there'll be more from Chuck as well, Cluck, even in the future, for sure. I was going to hope I could make this a straight macro without any execution pins, but with all the looping we're going to do, we're going to have to include them. Okay, so rather than giving it a specific set of, rather than sourcing the vector from a specific place, we will give it the vector to check. Okay, so object coordinates. Actually, we'll go specifically for star because we'll do an object version of this as well at some point. So we're basically checking to see, are the input coordinates in the save data? And then we want to know as well to what knowledge level are we looking for. So what are we actually doing? So it's check system or system knowledge level check. I guess that's kind of what we're doing with it. So we want to know where it is, and we want to know what knowledge level are we doing our cutoff for. Yeah, if we call that minimum knowledge level, then our output is going to be let's just do yes and no for a minute, because I need to think about what it is we're actually looking for here. Just trying to think about the use cases for this macro, and I want to save on some code reuse where possible. So we make a local boolean in a minute. So rather than using our local variable that we have elsewhere. Let's just make it's a local boolean within the macro. So we'll replace that. They don't look as nice, but they're handy. Okay, so what this macro is doing is comparing, whether it's searching our exploration data for this set of coordinates, and if there's a match, then it will then check each planet within that system to see if any of them are at least at that level. So if one or more are not meeting that knowledge level, then we know that that's a system that requires scanning. I'm wondering whether we do it the other way around, whether we make that a greater than instead, or greater or equal than. That might actually make a bit more sense in my head logically. So then what we're asking is, is anything exceeding that? Oh, I suppose that's not what we're checking for though, is it? Right, actually no, if we go back to doing the minimum one, so because the use case for this is we want to know, is there some, are we needing to do a scan? So that would be I don't know why, but I'm finding it difficult to get my head around that. I know what I want it to do. So when it comes for like this, so we're checking to see whether or not we have an unexplored target. So hang on. Yeah, so that would be replaced by the macro. Although actually we'll embed that into the node, I think. So we'll pop the macro in there, get rid of that, do that as our output, and then you get rid of that and that. Give that. Okay, so that's the thing we've got selected right now on the sensors. So we're saying, do we have a minimum knowledge level? Check. Minimum knowledge level is 1. And where I'm kind of struggling to get my head around it is, yes, we're succeeding we're finding something in breach of the minimum level, but really that would be a fail, not a success, depending on how you look at it. So I'm trying to think of a way of wording this that kind of is a little bit more obvious. So has the system been scanned to a minimum of knowledge level 1? And if we're hitting something that hasn't been, then yeah, then that really is more of a failure state than a success state. So this one, blah, 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 true, true. So, guess that makes more sense. Yeah, because if the check fails, it means at least one planet has not been scanned to knowledge level 1. Because we're checking for a minimum knowledge level. If none are found, then the check has passed, in which case the answer to our question is no. Okay, now when it comes to selecting the star system that we want to actually target, we need to do the same thing where we're employing our minimum knowledge check, minimum knowledge level check. That's difficult to say. So we're checking that per star system until we find one that fails the check. So if it fails the check, then we need to target it and go and scan it. So we don't care about that. So that would be our check. Okay, and our minimum knowledge level again is 1. Okay, so as we're looping through our list of star systems, if the check fails, then that's a valid target. So what we then do is, yeah, we then pop that over to the sensors console as a target, and we have now targeted our object of choice. So when this check goes through a second time, we'll get check failed on this, which takes us up to here, and that's when we focus on selected target. So that's more of an action thing. Select system less than knowledge level 1. Okay, now the beauty again of doing this with the sorted data is that we'll probably come across something you haven't explored yet quite quickly, and then we'll early out on the loop, which means it doesn't need to loop through the entire 3,000 odd stars that are in the list. It's probably only doing half a dozen at most, so this shouldn't ever loop for a long time. Okay, so again, this is all ticking once per second, so we need to make sure that these ticks continually match. Okay, and for that one we can let's find the right page it should be on. Looking for. Let's just borrow the whole thing. Copy paste for the win. Actually, that needs to be there. Because that actually is a check. Are we focusing on the target? So that one should be fairly simple, where we simply get our sensors data and I forgot, if you press the middle mouse button it goes back. And then I want to know what long range page we're on. So if that is equal to that, and then that's our check. So, are we focusing on the target? No. These need moving about. And if yes, then we'll do our long range survey. Right then, so that should go through that logic and start scanning systems. Now what we're not doing yet is we're not checking for the actual criteria. I just want to see whether or not it does autonomously just keep scanning system after system. Okay. So I guess without touching anything or putting them on the right sensor mode, let's just say sensors orders, find text signatures. So they're going to pick something. Okay, so we're not grabbing a target, so what are they doing? Okay, so they've got search for text signatures there. That's weird. Why are they stopped ticking? So this should be running once per second. Alright, time for some debugs. Or it's getting stuck somewhere. Yeah, you've explored everything already. Make sure the tick is actually ticking. And then we'll stick that in there so we know it's going to the right place. Search for text signatures. So we know that that worked because we did actually switch to long range mode. And it might be the macro that's failing, wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, let's just check that macro output. Have a look at what it's actually looking at. Check past for that. Check failed for that. Just so we can capture the name of what it's actually checking, so we'll know whether or not it is actually scanned or not. Whoop. really... Okay, so tick is doing its tick, that's good. Okay, so the check is passing for the solar system, which we would expect it to. Okay. So check is passing, which means that's no. So select system. Okay. Selecting unexplored system. Right, and then we should have obviously a lot of stuff spamming up here. But let's just see whether it actually finds a matching system or not. So that one needs exploring, and we'll make that a nice green, and let's actually make that stay there so we don't lose it. And then we'll also report the failures as well, but really quickly, just to see just how many it's failing on before it finds a match. So technically, we should only find one red one, because the solar system is the only one that's explored. Okay, so not seeing any green ones appearing. So the fact that only Sol is reporting up means that this pin must be firing, because it's not continuing with the array, because otherwise there'd be lots and lots of red names in there. In fact, let's make that 1 second. Okay, and then are we even getting this far? Oh, that's not going to help, is it? That's what I was doing last time. Okay. So I guess that's not... Either that's not working... Why is that not working? Or is it the whole loop thing? Perhaps it is. To be honest, I could do that instead. Yeah, because if we come off of this loop when there is a match, but if there isn't ever a match, then we'll come off of this one instead. But we're still checking in both instances to make sure that that has been set to true. Okay, so it's still saying the same thing. Oh, I'm an idiot. I just realised I've hooked that up to there. So of course it's it's starting with the Sol system, failing with this, but then breaking out of the loop. I'm such an idiot sometimes. That's more like it. Okay, so that's what I'd expect to see. Lots and lots of spam whilst it checks all the different star systems. But we can see full well that none of those are explored. So that's interesting. Let's set that back to 0.1 again. So none of these are actually passing. I wonder if that would make a difference. Because we might be killing the loop before we actually do the check. Just a guess, but worth trying and seeing. Otherwise, I'll separate those out into two separate loops. We will get to the bottom of it. Okay, yeah, so pretty sure it's this macro that's failing, which doesn't surprise me because it is a nasty macro. Right. So rather than nesting those loops inside one another, let's instead capture a reference to this here. So we want a local wildcard, and then we want to assign that to what's going on there? That's more like it. Yeah. So rather than doing that and all of that, which we'll move down there, we will grab ourselves a local reference to the matching save data. And I guess we'll also redo this as well. So we'll do that twice, just to make sure that we're not missing anything. Try and make this as clean as possible. Right, so we'll loop through our exploration data. If we find a matching system, we will reflect the fact that we found something. We will then assign that to our local wildcard, and then if we take that, again, an effort to make it as tidy as possible, do that. So if we found a match, then we want to be able to break that and loop that. So we're going to loop our matching target array if indeed we find one. So that only fires if it was true. Which means that can hide up there somewhere. And that needs just straighten it off up there. Okay. Then we need to do the same thing here. So make a local boolean, again assign that to 0. And assign it to true on matching. Okay, so we're doing the same thing, but rather than nesting one loop inside the other one, we'll just handle them separately to avoid conflicts and confusion. Again, let's just tidy that up a little bit. So we have a matching system. Let's just make sure we annotate that. So check for a matching system in the data, and then check to see if any planet has less than the minimum knowledge level. Okay. Right, so if that is true, then the check has indeed failed. Similarly, that would be the failure state for that. So that's if there's no matching system at all, then the check has passed. Although, saying that might be where we were going wrong actually. So yeah, so if that fails, then actually that's wrong. That's a failure because there's not even a match for that system in the data, therefore it hasn't been scanned, therefore the check has failed. If it is, yes, if it is in the data and none of them are less than the minimum knowledge level, then our check has passed. That's the only time the check would pass. Otherwise, it's a failure. Right. I think that's the logic that we needed. That should be a little bit more robust now. Hey Melty, thanks for watching. I've been doing this, well, I've been working on this game like professionally since about January 21. Prior to that, I was working on fan projects, so just non-commercial fan stuff, just as a hobby. So in total, I've been working on it for about, 9 years. I've been working in Unreal, but yeah, commercially only since January 21.
Initiating long-range survey. Initiating long-range survey. Initiating long-range survey.
Right, we're getting somewhere. Okay, so this macro is good now. It's doing what it's supposed to do. I think where it was failing previously is we weren't catering for the fact that there was nothing in the data, which of course is a failure check. So that should do us now. We'll leave that debug there for a second. One thing that we didn't do. Why did it go back to there? It's weird. Yeah, I just want to see whether or not we are already conducting a survey, because we don't want to obviously do that if we already are. So we want to get our sensors data from our handy macro. Get rid of all the stuff we don't want, and very simply, if scanning is false, then go ahead and do the survey. See, I could make this another check in its own right here, but that's just probably expanding this more than it needs to. Yeah, I don't really class the stuff I was doing back in 2020 as like actually working on the project properly, because it was all a lot of experimentation and a lot of false starts in a way. It wasn't really until January that we like properly knuckled down and got on with it. I guess it was whenever we opened the Discord server. Not quite sure when that was. It was around about then. Kind of end of 2020, start of 21.
Initiating long-range survey. Initiating long-range survey.
It's interesting. Why did you do it twice? Okay, so when this scan finishes, she should select the new system and scan that one instead.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Yeah, that seems to be happening much as we'd want it to. I guess something we could do with doing is add the ability for them to act more slowly between tasks. So delay the tick.
Survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Right, so if I now go over here and cancel off that order, then once that one's finished, they shouldn't do anything.
Long-range survey complete.
Okay, and then if we go back to our data, yeah, there we go. So we've autonomously done a long-range survey on 4 systems, which is good. So when the survey finishes and we go ahead and select the next system, I think we need to just induce a bit more of a delay, so the NPC's not doing it too quickly, because we want them to be doing it with the cadence of a human. So what we need, we need a new boolean here so that we can give them that breathing room. Okay, so if we've got an active NPC, or active action NPC working. That's a better name for it. And we'll invert that. Although we can make that a little bit easier on ourselves by doing that instead. Okay. So if we've got an active NPC and they're currently idle, then we go through and run the logic. So what we can actually do now is when we go and we start working, we can set that to false, and then that frees us up to take as long as we want to do this, because we've stopped it from rerunning the tick like 1 second later. So that means we can kind of breathe a little bit when doing this. So I guess, for example, when we go to long range mode, what we really want to do is just put in a bit of a delay there, and give that NPC a chance to actually look at the screen before then carrying out their next action. But it does mean we also need to make sure that we set the NPC to idle after doing their task. Otherwise they'll stop working. And we have to do this everywhere that we have an action. Which means that there are going to be many instances where I forget it. Although I think, setting it on each task means I don't need to worry about it for these ones. So if we default that boolean to true, then it will assume idle unless told otherwise. So unless I do that, then it doesn't need thinking about, which is good. Right, so what should happen now is, after going to the long range sensors, the NPC will wait a couple of seconds before actually clicking on something, just to simulate them spending time looking at the screen. So we stand in front of them while we do that. So they're looking at the screen.
Initiating long-range survey. Initiating long-range survey.
I think they were actually targeting Sat-J initially. That might be the default target, so we'll double check that.
Long-range survey. Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Okay. So I'm noticing a step missing from there. Hey Sirius, good to see you, as always. So this, are we focusing on the target business? that needs to make sure we're focusing on the right target, because the NPC is not pressing the back button, so they're not going back to the main listing. They're just targeting the next planet without physically being able to. They're basically cheating. We can get rid of this debug now. Right, so switching to long range mode, wait a couple of seconds, that's fine. Do we have an unexplored target? So that's fine as is. So before we go ahead and select the target, we need to basically do the same thing we're doing here. Are we currently on focused target mode? So do we have an unexplored target? No. So we need to select one. So that's basically that same check. Trying to make sure we don't do this in the wrong order, because we could check that first, but then it'd always check that, which means it'll always go back to the main listing, which would kind of break the logic flow. So yeah, so checking whether we have a valid target first is definitely the first thing we need to do. And then whether we do or not, we still need to check, are we focusing on it? So if we're not, then yeah, we can go ahead and select it. If we are, then actually we want to go back to that long range mode again. So we need to duplicate that one there. And again, do the delay. And then before we do this, I think we also need to check whether or not we actually have a target. Now, I can't remember off the top of my head just how reliable this Boolean is, because I haven't used it for a while, but it should be false if we don't currently have something selected. So even though the default vector is 0, 0, 0, which is sat j, which makes it think we're targeting sat j, that should cover the fact that we've got sat j naturally targeted. So we're going to have to plumb that into there. Okay, so that should hopefully stop it doing that quick completion as soon as we issue the order. let's check the sensors, because that's probably that boolean that's messing us up there. So that should be set to true when we go ahead and do this. Yeah. So we are setting that to true. Well, it's not that then. For some reason it's not showing us the live logic flow like it normally would do. Don't know why. We normally get nice little dotted lines to show where the logic is failing. Okay, well, we can see that it's getting that far. So we're definitely targeting it. It is illusion, yes. The chair is the NPC until such a time as the NPC can physically sit in the chair. Okay, so that should be returning true. Or are we do we keep firing false? Because that should be setting to true. It's definitely setting it to true there. Probably Leahy, yeah. Well, now we need the logic running on the NPCs themselves. I'm not sure what you mean by server box, but the NPCs are the thing with the brain. It's just right now because we can't sit them in a chair and have them stay put. We just run that logic on the chair. As soon as the NPCs are physically capable of sitting down and getting up, then we can just copy paste that straight onto the NPC themselves. doesn't hurt being on the chair for now. It's not causing any issues. I think I see what's happening. So when we go back to the main listing, we're clearing the fact that there's a target. So on the debug up on the top left here, you can see it's going from true to false. So we're still targeting Alpha Centauri. But yeah, that's going to false. So hang on, let me kill the task a minute. Just want to double check. So if we target it and then go back, yeah, going back it stays targeted. Whereas if we go galactic and back to long, it's cleared the target. So rather than going back, rather than pressing this button, we need to press this button as far as the NPC is concerned. So we just need to make sure we press back. And that should fix that. He says confidently to be deleting the debugs, which I'll probably regret. Yeah, so we don't have an unexplored target. And if we're focusing on a target right now, then rather than that, we need that. Just make sure that that is in fact the right ID to be sending. So it was sensors long back. That's what we wanted. The string has to match exactly, otherwise it won't work. Right, hopefully that will break the NPC out of the true-false loop. Okay, it's sort of better. It's at least remaining targeted. Okay. Just double check what that's actually doing. So we're sending long range back. Okay, so we're not clearing that tick, so that's fine. Just wanted to make sure we weren't completely clearing out the target. Okay, which means it's something else. Where is the logic failing? So I think what's happening here is that is either coming up with false or it's passing the check. And I think what I'll do is I'll add a permanent debug on here that we can turn on as needed. Just so we can see what's going on. So it has target target name. And then why not just give it some chords for good measure. I just click on the wrong thing. Okay, bit messy, but that gives us our permanent debug. Put that in there. Right then, what's going on? And that's interesting. So it's still setting has target to false. Interesting. So we're definitely checking that Boolean there. So we're sending that button press. So we're pressing that, which sends that, which that now. which goes through and sends that through player controller. We're not scanning, so we go through to long range. Really weird. What if I just not even bother setting that? Like, there's no way that Boolean should be false. Okay, so this is unreliable. Somewhere that's being set to false, and I'm not sure where, because it's clearly being set to true here, and this is the only place where that's happening. So that's a little mysterious. Yeah, I've developed some ironclad patience doing this, that's for sure. So this is a simple check. We don't need to do anything with that. We're not clicking that. It's this which is doing it. So we're checking to see whether we're basically, are the sensors focused on the target? Yes, they are, because actually, no, why? That's a fair point. Oh, I wonder if it's coming from here. So focus target. I wonder if that's clearing it. I bet it is. Tis. Now, we were using this for something, and I can't remember what we were using it for. Only the gets that we're interested in, and most of these aren't actually genuine references. It's just that this contains that text, and I don't want to press hide unconnected pins because it takes ages on this blueprint. So we just need any instances where we're actually getting that value for some purpose or other, which is none on the widget, but what about on here? Oh, that was on there. So what about on the widget? Yeah, so there we are checking it, and that's just for scrolling, so that's fine. Yep, that won't affect it. Okay, so I don't think it's going to hurt it if I just set that to true when we're focusing on a target, because technically we do still have the long range version of it targeted, we're just not using it on the short range mode. But let's see whether that breaks anything. The sensors are one of those systems where it's so complex now that you can get some things kind of intertwined that are messing up other things. Although I've tried to make it as modular as possible.
Initiating long-range survey.
Yeah, so that was what was causing it. So I'll have to go through after the stream and just make sure that having that ticked when you focus on a target isn't breaking anything specific. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that it would, but you never know. There's always something.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
That's a much nicer cadence, although I think I might reduce that delay from 2 seconds to 1 second on the main listing. They do seem to stare at it just that little bit uncomfortably too long.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Okay, yeah, that's not too bad. So that having been done, I think we will reduce the delay there to 1 second, and also there. So they pause, but not for too long. Now the difficult part with this is now that we are scanning things, post-scan, I guess we need to check to see whether or not that object had any text signatures or not. So we need to do some logic for that on here, where we do our criteria check following our scan. So I might add that as a separate thing. Yeah, let's do that. So we need to flag that in some way. Okay. We'll do another variable for that. So if we do check completion criteria, and we'll make sure we set that to true before we allow it to start ticking again. Then on here, we'll set that up as another check, basically. So before we go ahead and do the rest of it, we will double check that first. So check completion criteria. Which is just that, basically. So let's make that really unnecessarily collapsed. So this is the interesting one now then, is I suppose we've already got something targeted. And we're already focused on that, because having been through all of this, we've already done that work. So I suppose what we're asking here is do we have any text signatures on the sensors data that we've just done? Now, if we were being super robust about this, then we'd do a lot of this checking again to make sure that we have the right thing targeted still, because if the player goes over the NPC shoulder and starts pressing buttons, we need to make sure that this can recover. But I guess we'll harden it up afterwards and just get the base logic working first. so we need selected sector location. And then civ data. So quite simply, if there's a name connected to the civ data and it's not just an empty field, then we know that there's definitely a text signature there because there's a civilization there. Now moving forward, obviously this gets a lot more complicated because if it's just a ship that happens to be in a system, then that's still a text signature. So that needs to flag up equally. Which means when we go through and we target a system and do the focus view, that does actually generate the system details, like the full system details. So anything that gets spawned as part of that would be included in that data. So moving forward, we need to be checking that ideally. But for now, we can check this. And again, I'm wondering whether, for usability's sake and usefulness' sake, for now, we only have it check F, G, and K class worlds, because we know that's the highest chance of finding a text signature, given that there are no random ships just dotted about the galaxy yet. Yeah, I will do that actually. I'll add that to the target selection. Otherwise we'll be sitting around for a long time waiting for that. I had a feeling I hadn't connected that up. Okay. Actually, I think I'm going to remove the no from that and just put that in there. Because effectively what we're doing is if there are no text signatures, then we've done our check, so now we can just carry on and select the next target. If we have found a text signature, then we need to go and do something specific with it. So alert captain and close task. mind. That one. Okay. So we don't have the ability to alert the captain yet, which is that's essentially some of the work we need to do for the comms console. So we need to raise some kind of a task for the command, which in most cases will be informational and just need acknowledging, but we need to build the system for handling that. So so the way we want the logic to work is once that text signature has been found, or whatever other criteria that we set, we need to alert the captain and close the task off. So the NPC's just sat there and waiting for the next orders. So the captain can then decide what they want to do with that information. So that's the next thing we need to build to complete the loop, essentially. But for now, we will just cancel off the bridge orders. Yeah, so basically that's what I was just saying, Sirius. So we won't have that bit yet, but what we can do is just leave it where it is. So hang on, let's just make sure that we also set these things as well. So just to make sure that we don't start ticking the same thing over and over again, we'll set that to false and then set that to true. Just make sure that we're covering our bases on that. And I just realized I didn't do that here, so just making sure that we are setting the NPC to idle. Yeah, so let's just add a check on here for the type of world that we're looking for. So if we do location type, I can't remember now what we have as information types. It must be that one we're looking for. Yeah, that's the one. So we're just going to check against these. So we want F, G, and K class star systems specifically. So we want to know, are either of these true? And then we can get rid of our debugs. Hang on, what's going on there? tidy that up a bit. Right, so specifically we are looking for those types of stars only. So if it's not one of those types of stars, we'll just skip it. And if it is, then we'll do our actual check and target it if necessary. So that just narrows our search down a little bit in our NPC logic. So what happens now, hopefully, is it should now stop searching if it comes across a text signature. Now, I don't know off the top of my head what text signature is closest to Earth, but we're about to find out, hopefully.
Initiating long-range survey.
Although saying that, we're better off doing this in a procedural sector because none of the real-world stars will have alien civs yet.
Long-range survey complete.
So to make sure it actually goes back. Okay, so what it should have done is the criteria check and then continued. So scanning is full, start the scan, set that to true. Oh yeah, so we actually need to check that actually over here because yeah. Actually, let's do it here instead. Because we only want to do this if we're not currently scanning, because we don't want to run the check whilst we're still actively scanning that system, because we'll check these, it'll set these up otherwise. Yeah, so if we're still scanning when it's checking, then we'll skip that. See whether that sorts that out. No idea, Anasi. it's one of the things that will get done at some point. It's certainly not high on the priority list. Hey Ranza, good to see you.
Initiating long-range survey.
We're getting there. We're automatedly exploring now, which is
Long-range
nice.
survey complete.
Just need to make sure that they do their check criteria properly, which they don't seem to be doing. Let's stick in some debugs here. Checking criteria. I wonder if it's actually finding, or think it's finding, a text signature, because that is for some reason not empty. Oh wait, I've done this the wrong way around, haven't I? Yes, so if text is not empty, then it's true. Right, don't need that. I know what's happening now. Yeah, so it was finding a blank field and thinking, there's a text signature here, when in fact there wasn't.
Initiating long-range survey.
So before we move on to a procedural sector, let's just make sure that they're only selecting F, G and K class stars.
Long-range survey complete.
We're going to go back. Do we still have a task? Oh yeah, so the altar's still there. Okay. Right, fine. Bet it's that. Of course, we're setting that which stops it from proceeding. So we need to make sure anywhere where we have just an empty action, we need to make sure we set the NPC to idle. Otherwise, it will not continue next time round. So we need to make sure absolutely everything completes on every single pin. let's go somewhere else. I could just have the chair, please. Just target Earth, and then we'll just go. Oops. That was interesting. I hit something there which got rid of the cursor. Not sure what though. So we just cheat our way over here. Wait for the galaxy to catch up. There we go. Right, so we're now 1500 light years from Earth. Oh yeah, press F. Oh, that was the other thing I wanted to do as well, wasn't it? So where I was confusing myself there is I'm clicking on the chair, expecting to get a menu, because we're outside of the seated range. But of course I have to press F to bring up the radio menu. But it would be better that, you know, if the chair's got nothing in it and you're all the way over here, if you mouse over it and click, it should still bring up the menu rather than having to physically go and press F on it. It's just one of those usability things. Right, so they're going somewhere. Where are you going? Stop that. Yeah, so if we look at the long range here, we're now somewhere else. So we shouldn't target any of these. We should target that G class first. So let's see whether they do. Yes, they do. Great.
Initiating long-range survey.
So what we want to see then is if a text signature comes up, do they stop? And if there isn't, do they continue? It does keep trying, yeah.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Okay, great. So we are going through different systems now. Yeah, me too, Ranzer. I've never actually made it the whole way there. I always get kind of sidetracked with stuff.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
Yeah, same. Exactly that.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
So of course, What we don't know is where the tech signatures are in this sector. So we don't know how long this is actually going to take. I'll give her a couple more systems and then we'll call it quits. Otherwise we could be sat here for an hour.
Long-range survey complete. Initiating long-range survey.
This is like the epitome of working as a sensor specialist as your day job. Just sitting here, running survey after survey, looking for something worth exploring. It's very much a job simulator in space. Yeah, I could probably stick one on Alpha Centauri, to be honest. Or at least on every
long-range survey complete.
Every real world star.
Initiating long-range survey.
Okay, if there isn't one on this one, I'll do that.
Long-range survey complete.
Okay. Well, we know that's working.
Initiating long-range.
Okay, so if we were to force it on the Galaxy Gen, then where's our Galaxy Gen gone? Right, let's just close all these tabs because I will get confused otherwise. Right, so generating a sector. So we go through lots and lots of steps. The bit we're specifically interested in, there, so generate real world stars. So we could search for the name specifically and only do it for that one, but what we'll do is we will add civilization data to every real world star. So call it test race, tech level bazillion. Yeah, and then highly xenophobic and highly aggressive. So what should happen is when we scan Alpha Centauri, it should come up with an alien race there now and stop scanning.
Initiating long-range survey. Long-range survey complete.
There we go. And it's stopped. So that's good. So what we want to happen now is having identified that there is a tech signature on one of these planets, and obviously it rejigged the number of planets and the order of the planets to make sure there was one in the habitable zone. But that's essentially what we want it to do. Well, I think what we'll do for now is we'll just have them verbalize it, because we don't have the mechanism for raising a command order on here yet. Although in some ways we do. I might be able to crowbar that in really quick. Let's have a look in a sec. Yeah, at the moment it's the computer's voice on the console. We'll have each console verbalize things, but the NPCs will also speak out loud too. NT Witch, yeah. So right now we're limiting it to FG and K class stars, because that's where the tech signatures are living for the alien races that we're spawning at the moment. Once we start randomly generating content within those systems, then yes, there could be an alien research station anywhere near where we know there to be an alien civilization. So it's a complicated one because there are a few chicken and egg scenarios that we got to kind of fight against. In order to generate a star system and have life and everything on that star system, obviously there's a lot of processing that goes on to do that. Now, so we can't do that for every single star system that you can see, say, here. So if we go max range, so right now there's 1800 star systems. Now we absolutely cannot generate all 1800 of those stars with all of their life-bearing calculations. So if we want to have an alien ship that is at FTL and it's exploring its sector of space, then we need to know where that ship came from, where its homeworld is, and who its people are. And we can't know those things without generating the full star system and indeed their entire civilization. So because you can't do one without the other, we can't show ships outside of their system without generating their system. So what we do as a workaround is we first work out how many alien civilizations do we want within a sector of space. And then we roll some dice on the political structure of that sector. So, like, is it one large civilization? Is it just a scattering of independent worlds? Is it two large empires at war? We go through and we decide what that sector comprises of in terms of FTL capable aliens. We then create the star systems for those aliens first before we do anything else, so that we know where they are, who they are, and if we then need to generate ships in that sector, we know what systems those ships relate to. Once we've done that, we then generate all the rest of the stars. And if a civilization is a non-FTL civilization, they do not get generated until you enter their system, in which case the math can then work out, are the conditions on that planet good enough to spawn life? So that's our like Drake equation solution stuff. But yeah, so there's a line between the FTL capable civilizations, because we need to generate their ships outside of their system, and the ones that are not FTL capable, in which case we can just generate those on demand as you enter their actual star system. So when it comes to, like, is there a research station around a planet in some random star system? Either we have to decide that beforehand and generate that star system with that thing in it, or when we do generate a star system, we look whether it's nearby to a known FTL civilization, and if it is, then there can be a percentage chance that they have in some way colonized it, either directly or via a station or something. So there are some things that you can't do before doing some prerequisite work first. Now the difficulty with that is that the stellar data is very, very tiny, and has to be, because we are sorting massive arrays with thousands of array entries, and we want to make sure we do that on the tiniest amount of data possible, because if we've got an array with 3,000 entries, and that's actually 3,000 structs which contain multiple variables, then we need that payload to be absolutely minuscule. So if we start adding things like there needs to be an alien structure here, then that's more data that we're adding to that array, which may have 3 to 30,000 entries in some cases, depending on which part of the galaxy you're in. So every single data point we add expands the entire struct for every single star system. So we just need to be really careful in what order we do things in, and where or rather at what point we generate that data point. So the question, because I'm kind of going off on a tangent, is there going to be tech signatures on non-habitable systems? Yes, but we need to look at how we put them there, and that's I guess that's the fun challenge, really, and that's the part about this that I really love. It's having these challenges and coming up with solutions, and ultimately finding the most efficient way of doing things. But I imagine going with the data structure the way it is, we will probably pre-generate those as part of that alien civilization, and then backfill their space with procedural star systems as needed. Because we have full control over it that way, and we can do things like, if we generate an alien species with, say, their homeworld is here, and we then generate the usual sphere of star systems around them, then within a given range of their homeworld, we can decide whether or not they will have colonized that system, whether or not they've put a station there, and if they have, then is there a trade route there? So do we need to show starships flying to and from these places that belong to that alien species? So we can actually build up their empire and all of their infrastructure and get that set before filling in the rest of the stars. So it creates a more organized alien race that isn't quite as random as it otherwise would be. So we can actually control the layout, control the linkages between different systems, and make it feel a lot more believable rather than just being, random noise. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's just a long way of saying, yes, there will be tech signatures outside of their systems, and in which case, yes, the NPC crew will have to scan every star, not just the nice looking ones. Okay, but what we need to do now is we need to generate a bridge order for the command crew. I'm great at short answers. Yeah, so our payload structs for these orders, obviously we've only done helm and sensors, so we'll need to do this for command as well. But we've done a lot of the background work for the task manager, so we actually do have the capability of raising orders for any bridge station. We just need to create the data structure for it. So let's very quickly just copy, say, the sensors one. Make that the command one. Yeah, so there's going to be some complication as well surrounding ship-wide tasks. So when the captain says fully explore this star system, they don't need to be there for that, so they can disappear off the bridge and go do something else. So they're not going to be aware of when the NPCs or players have finished that task. So we need to make sure that when that task gets raised for the captain, there's some kind of an announcement like captain to the bridge or something like that, that the computer announces to make sure the captain then goes and deals with that. And it also needs to tie into a ship-wide order if the message that's being sent to them relates to that ship-wide order. So we'll probably need to keep that parent ID hanging around. Yeah, we're going to need an enum for that as well, for the command orders. Because if we can get this hooked up into a full loop, then we can actually stick in an NPC captain and have an NPC captain, NPC sensors and NPC helm, and have the three of them completely pilot the ship as a team without the player even being involved, which of course is one of our long-term goals, so that you can just be a passenger on the ship and have the crew completely do everything without you. Right, so what do we actually want? Let's get rid of a bunch of these. So acknowledge, I guess either we need one for each possible order that they give NPCs, or we just do with a generic acknowledge order completion. Something like that. What else? Acknowledge incoming hail. Yeah, because there's going to be a few things with this that we're going to have to experiment with. I think, as with a lot of the things we do, there's going to be some iteration on this as to what the most efficient back and forth turns out to be. Like with doing the radial menu and the NPC commands and everything, there's definitely been quite a lot of heavy iteration on finding the best, smoothest approach for it. So I think the same will be true here. So orders, command. Right, so we don't care about sensor mode, we don't care about that we'll keep target for now. And we'll leave our objective text. Right, so we need to make sure that we add that to the struct now. So create bridge orders, new command orders. Actually, we'll stick them at the top. Okay. Just make sure they're not needed elsewhere, because they're probably going to be needed everywhere, aren't they? We're basically treating the command console just as another bridge station. So it's yeah, it's just another station on the bridge as far as the systems are concerned. Okay, so that doesn't need it. That's done. That's done. That's done. That doesn't need it. Okay. Thank you, Delta. Yes, like and subscribe, get the bell on, and all that stuff. Ah, thank you, Never. I think you are the only one. Okay, so now that we've added all that stuff, we've now got the option to actually create this. So our objective is going to be check check tech signature on current system, maybe something like that. This is where we're going to have to iterate on it, because depending on what has just happened on the bridge, obviously the NPC that picks this up needs to be able to action it via a logic chain, in the same way that a human player would, just by reading the text. So for a human, that might be quite obvious. You just read what it says, acknowledge the order, and decide what the bridge crew are doing next. But for the NPC, they're going to need more specific task details. So maybe we have under acknowledge order completion, we could maybe have a separate list of all the different orders, like a sub list, just so we can switch on that for the logic. And then we'll handle the hail side of things once we have the comms console up and running. I was going to hash these as a string, I think, at some point, because I noticed for the props when I was making those, I forgot that what I was doing is I was taking the time now and I was making a hash from that. So I think what was I doing? Was it 2? Can't remember how I was doing it now. It was something like that, and making a hash from that. Yeah, something like that. So rather than doing a random integer value, we could in fact just do this instead and just generate some hashes based on the time, but I'll see how that actually works. It might have less chance of coming up with duplicates if we do that way. Right, so that raises that. That gets a command order in the system. So in terms of objective completion for command orders, I think we'll let the captain NPC or captain player decide when they have acknowledged this. So if we just have an acknowledge button on the console, then they can just hit acknowledge. Right, okay, fine, I know I have to do that, and then it's then up to their prerogative as to what they actually do with that information. They could quite rightly turn around to the NPC and say, you know what, I don't care that you found a text signature, I want you to go and do this instead. So we'll leave it up to the captain to decide what to do. So these are more informational really than actual tasks that need completing. Right, and then on here, yeah, snooze button, that would do it. If we add command orders onto here, I guess we'll put them first. So I'm going to make a new button for it. That's a very different button. So it gives us an extra button. And then we want to make sure we, I guess, duplicate that one. Call that one command. Pop that in there. then we need a listing on there, a list view entry. I guess we'll go ahead and steal one of these ones. It's command, just to be confusing. And there's going to be a few errors here because we need to cast to the right object. Hey Ludbud, we are having the NPC autonomously search for text signatures, which they are now doing, and now we're just completing the loop, and we're adding the ability to raise a command order so that the captain can acknowledge the fact that that has actually been done. I think that's everything needed on there. And then we just need to rename that button to, well, just have it say acknowledged, I guess. Well, that's no good. Okay. I wonder what acknowledged is in German. That's always my benchmark. Oh, it's actually shorter than English. Anerkannt. I don't know whether that's anywhere close to the correct pronunciation. Still too long though. To be honest, we don't need any of this stuff on here, so I think what I'll do is just move all that out the way. Let's pop that on there. Oh yeah, hate it when that happens. Right, that should give us our listing. So then we need to change these to the command one. Command, that one. We don't care about what it looks like right now. We can polish that after the fact. We just want to make sure that the right button is there and it does something. Okay, and then let's make sure that we actually create those orders. Oh, and that we acknowledge them as well. So if we duplicate that, so this will be command. I'm going to change this because we kind of want Captain and XO to be in the same bucket because it's coming up on the same console. Right, so we want list view command, and then we want command orders. Change that to command. We've got command orders there, and then place that with that one. That should at least get the orders being listed. Okay, so yeah, we need to make sure that we flag that we've raised something. Which we'll likely do on here. So create command orders, and let's make sure I get the right one. And make a bit of room, tidy it up. Remember, tidy blueprints, tidy mind. Ooh, yeah, we need to sort that struct out because we hadn't actually added that as part of the data. Question is, which one? Department tasks bridge. Where are you hiding away? Oh, it was in that folder. Okay. Yeah, so as I go through and add each bridge station, I need to convert these from just Boolean arrays to the actual proper struct. Just so that we've got the proper setup going on. so that type's going to be different, isn't it? Yeah. None of that's actually needed. So that's if we need to do any setup tasks when we assign the order, but we don't need to in this instance, so it can just stay like that. Okay, that's the add. I always found this the boring part of doing like database work. So working on web applications back when I used to do that sort of thing. Doing the whole add, edit, delete functionality for every application I created. I don't know why, but that was always the really boring bit. And it's the same kind of thing here. So that's the add. Now we're doing the edit. Probably. Should be everything there. And now we need to do the delete function. What I could probably do with this, to be honest, rather than having like a bajillion of these, we could potentially macro this and just have that as a wild card, or that as a wild card. Yes, exactly that, Ranzer. So the white's always the execution pin, so that's where the logic flow is going, and then green like this is an integer, for example. You kind of get used to what color corresponds with what over time, but yeah, this is an integer. Good to know, Danger Mouse. Good to know. So what I could do with this, to save having to do this over and over for every single one, is we could actually collapse this down to a macro and then have so if we can have a wildcard array, I suppose that's not going to work, is it? Because we've got to break that struct specifically. Yeah, there's no way of wildcarding that, I don't think. Nah, wouldn't be, would there? Yeah, because I was just thinking we could do a wildcard array for the loop, but then that won't work because we need to know what struct we're breaking. Removing the index would be easy enough, and we could do that channel as an input as well, but we can't work out which struct we're breaking, so that's not macroable, which is a shame because that would be useful. So if all that went to plan, then we should now have the ability to raise an acknowledgement task for the captain once we've completed our orders. And we can do that with all of them, to be honest. So if we do find text signature, and we just... Oh, it crashed. Why did that crash? That's no good. We don't want that. Bear with while I reload it. Oh, always. Clouds. That's me messing about with a cloud shader. That's a lot of stuff to restore. Let's not bother with that. Huh. This is going to be an interesting one. Let's see if it does that again. So I think what's happening there's the null reference to a struct entry, or because we change one of the structs, and then obviously the engine crashed, so something didn't save in the background. There's probably a null pointer on game state, which means I might have to restore that from a backup. Yeah, I will do. Okay, so that one's going to be a massive nightmare to fix. Yeah, which is going to take me a while. Okay, so on that note, I think we're going to have to call it a night there, because that is more broken than I can fix on stream, because I need to go through the different staged saves of game states, and I might need to pull a backup from Git as well. So yeah, you're going to have to leave that one with me, I'm afraid. So we were only half an hour away from ending anyway, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut the stream short and go off and fix this, because that's a nightmare. It's nothing worse than a corrupted blueprint, because if this were obviously a C++ class, you could just go into Visual Studio like this and actually fix it directly in Visual Studio. But because it's a blueprint, you can only fix that from within Unreal. And of course, if the Unreal then doesn't load because there's a corrupted blueprint, then yeah, you're scuppered. And the only solution to that is just to replace that blueprint with a previous save, which is annoying, but I will go through it and get to the bottom of it. Yeah, bad Unreal, bad. All right, have a good one, everyone. What day are we on today? It is Wednesday, isn't it? Yes, so I shall see you all on Friday. And it is definitely Friday, so it's definitely Wednesday, so it's definitely Friday. So I shall see you all on Friday at the usual time. Yeah, and wish me luck while I go and get this fixed. Oh, yes, and competition on Friday as well. So we'll be doing the key giveaway. Yeah, so make sure you get on Discord, pick your numbers, and yeah, linked to Discord in the description if you don't know it or you're not already on our server. But yes, join us. You are most welcome. Amos, I am sorry that I'm literally ending the stream just as you appear. So much appreciated. $2, $4. Thank you. But yes, I need to shoot off and fix this little nightmare. All right, have a great rest of the week, everyone, and I shall see you on Friday. Bye for now.